Howdy, folks. This is Big Sam. And have you ever seen a piece that looks something like this fall out of your Mosin Nagant? Believe it or not, this is actually a really common problem I see where people will say, hey, this fell out of my Mosin. And usually with that comes the worry of, oh no, I've broken my beloved rifle. Well, fear not, because today I'm going to show you just what this is and how to fix it. You see, if this falls out of your Mosin, chances are nothing is broken, and it's quite possible that it was just never installed properly in the first place, or at least by whoever put it in last, or whoever last reassembled the rifle. So let me show you this by getting in here, barreled action. So here we have, your run-of-the-mill 9130 barreled action, okay? And the important thing we're going to be taking a look at is right in here. So this is what we call a stripped receiver. It has no parts on it currently. And let me get my focus right here. All right. There's actually two important pieces we're going to be taking a look at. Now, this piece right here, it actually serves several different functions, but its primary purpose that we'll be looking at here is the actual ejector of the rifle. So if we look right here, this little poke right here is the ejector. The other thing this does is it actually prevents the round at the top of the magazine from coming out. So the round at the top of the magazine actually gets sandwiched between the interrupter and this guy. So imagine this was the round. So this guy actually serves several good purposes. Now, how does this work? How do we install this? Well, we look here. We actually need another part, which is this guy. This is the interrupter. So this whole mechanism is actually two separate pieces. The way this works is there's a dovetail. Let me get my focus in here so it doesn't keep going in and out, sorry. There's actually a dovetail in here, which is how this guy slides into the receiver, like here, okay? And then once it's in there, it's a pretty tight fit, but once it's in there, to ensure it doesn't back out under, recoil or transport or things like that, there's a little screw that goes in here. So this is actually really easy to install. All you need is something like a brass punch and then a hammer. And the way I do this, let me show you here. The way I do this is you see this hole? I actually put the punch in here, and then I hit it with a hammer this way. So something like this. And the key is to just hammer it until the hole lines up with the hole in the receiver. And then that way, you can get your screw in just a little bit more. Perfect. All right. Now we can see here that this is dirty. There's a lot of grime I haven't cleaned out, but the holes line up. You see I can put my brass punch through there. So now this is actually really easy to install our ejector. So all we do, we can actually use this as a tab, the interrupter itself. This installs from the outside going into the receiver, and that's how you take it out as well. So you just pull on this guy, like here with your finger, like this, and you just slide this guy in. Now you see, it's got these two little tabs here, one on each end. Make sure those are on the outside of the receiver. All right, so both of them are outside, and now I just line this hole up here with that little poke, and we're done. It's that simple. Now if we look here on the inside, we can see, okay, there's our ejector right there, and it's spring-loaded. So this is how, when the bolt moves back and forth, it presses this out along with the interrupter, and it allows a new cartridge to come up and then be fed into the chamber. So really handy. And what I like about this is it's really simple. So if this piece falls out of your rifle, let me just take it out here. All you need to do is just take off the stock and then pull this tab out, slide this guy in here like this, get that hole lined up, and then you're done. It's that simple. So chances are, if that fell out, nothing is broken. It may have just not been installed right. The good news is, if let's say maybe this poke right here is, for whatever reason, broke off, or I don't know, for some reason this broke. I've never actually seen either of these parts break. These are both incredibly resilient parts, really heavy metal here. But let's say one of these does break. Well, it's really easy to get a new piece if you have to replace one or both of these items. You can just check on places like eBay or Numeric Gun Parts. And what you would search for this piece would be just Mosin Nagant ejector. And then this piece, you could just search Mosin Nagant interrupter for this piece. Really simple. Now, if you have an earlier Mosin Nagant, you won't even have to worry about this falling out. Here's why. It actually used a different design altogether. It used a one-piece design. So this is an older design, and the new design went to two pieces, a little easier to manufacture each piece individually, right? One of the nice things there is, right, I can have if I have more manpower, I can parallelize the process. I can have one person make this part, and at the same time, I can have another person making this part. Whereas this part, perhaps one person just has to make the whole thing. So this could be a lot faster to produce, which is probably why they went to this design. Now, if we look here, on this particular end, we see this little star. That little star indicates that this ejector was produced by the Tula arsenal after 1928. That's what that star means. Now, we can look at this type 1 interrupter / ejector, and it becomes problematic because now, well, what do we call this? Because it's a cartridge holder / ejector / interrupter thing. Usually, I think this is most commonly referred to as interrupter. A lot of times it's referred to as ejector as well. But as we can see here, it's one piece. And then if we look a little bit closer here on the inside, see that little triangle there? Well, what that probably indicates is that this particular one-piece ejector was produced by the Izhevsk arsenal after 1928. So a relatively more modern one compared to a lot of ones you see. Now, when did these come about? Well, what we know is, based on what I've read, it appears that this style went away when the hex receiver went away. So around 1936, it appears, is when we would start to see this coming into production, right? And so it's interesting, we see the later style of factory markings here. So from the time of about 1928 to about 1935 is when you could find these later factory markings, the Izhevsk triangle or the Tula star on here. We can also look at another one here. This one's also interesting. If we look on the outside, we can see the factory marking. Might be hard to see, it's right here. That is an R in a circle. This type 1 ejector / interrupter was actually produced by Remington, who you may have heard of, a really famous gun manufacturer in America. And they, of course, produced Mosin Nagants during World War I for the Imperial Russian government. And this particular one I pulled off of a 1918 Remington, so more than likely this particular one was made in 1918 by Remington, so over 100 years old at this point. A really interesting piece. It's cool to get to take a look at some different markings on these old styles of parts here. Also worth noting the differences between these. We can see on the Remington one, there's like a little mill, this part is like kind of milled out here, whereas this one it's just a little bit different. It's just kind of flat here all the way through. So it's interesting to see the variations between a Russian-produced interrupter and an American-produced Mosin Nagant interrupter. We can see the poke here is a little bit different as well. But these parts are fully interchangeable and should work in any Mosin Nagant you have. So it's interesting, a lot of the different parts you can mix and match, right? I can take a Soviet-produced 9130 and put this old Remington interrupter in it, and it should work just fine. One of the really fascinating things about Mosin Nagants is just the wide variation of parts here. So again, if this fell out of your Mosin Nagant, don't worry, because it's easy to fix. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in more Mosin Nagant content, please stay tuned, because we've got a lot of interesting things coming down the pipeline. Please let me know if y'all have any prayer requests, and I'll see you next time.